Hummingbird. I think this is one of my favorite blocks in the whole quilt. I just love the action of it. Looks like it's hovering with its wings. Anyway, it's a lot of fun to make. It's pretty fast. So we're making 2 hummingbirds. This will be the same instructions for both hummingbirds, this video. And you actually, if you've done all your cutting for section set number 2 cutting, you've cut the pieces for it. So here is the zone 5 hummingbird. So let's work through how to make this block. Hummingbird block. Here, notice that all of these are in orange. So we're going to be using these orange lines when we make the hummingbird block. And I was able to cut out this section. All my fabrics are cut for the next 4 zones, and I went ahead and used the labels that are in your book that you can download. And so I am just going to take these off because we know that the colors in the book correspond. That's my little beak. Maybe I'll keep that together so I don't lose it. All right, our first thing we are doing is we are looking at the cut the curve section. And in cutting the curves, we are looking at the 3.5 by 3.5. That's what these are. And I have 4 of them. And it says that I'm cutting all 4 of them and I'm making A. So the A shape is very straightforward. We just put them on, we put the orange V on our corner and we go ahead and cut in the curve slot. Does not matter if they're right side up or right side down. This is discard. So here I have my 4 A shapes. And then I have 1 of this teal color. So I am going to do the same thing, cut an A shape with the teal. Oh, it totally blends into my mat. Look at that. Okay. And I do have my mat turned over, so I don't have all those extra lines I'm looking through. And then we're also working with 3 4 3/4 by 4 3/4 background. And the first thing we do with all 3 of these is cut them in half diagonally. And then I'm looking at the pattern. It tells me I'm only going to keep 5 of them. So you can either cut the curve and separate them, or you can go ahead and take 1 away now. And then I'm just going to go ahead and stack all of those. And when I do the B shape with the orange lines, I'm going to line it up on the 4s and then trim off the points that are extending beyond the ruler. And then this turns and we line up our orange. We're looking right here at our orange box corners right there. And we go ahead and cut in our curved slot. This is our discard. And now we have our B shapes. All right, so now we are moving on to sew the curves. And I hope by now you're getting very comfortable with sewing the curve. The curve never changes. The curve is always the same. It's just the size of block you're working with when you're using the Wonder Curve ruler. So we match it up where we have 4A and 4B background, and then 1A and 1B background. And then remember, when we sew a curve, the technique that we always use at Sew Kind of Wonderful is to have the concave piece be on your left. Make sure I've got my right side up. And then the convex piece is on your right, and that's what flips over. And you're going to sew this curve right here. This is a 1/4 inch tail. So we're just going to go ahead and sew that curve, and then we'll press our seam to our focus fabric. And we'll do the same with this set also. Okay, we are going to sew. I've left this set up just exactly how it was. 1/4 inch tail, sew a few stitches, and then go ahead and bring curved edges together. Remember, try not to pull on the bottom. Just bring it shifted over. And that's what you're going to do with all 5 of the curved pieces that are in the Hummingbird. So go ahead and sew all 5, and then we're going to press our seam to our focus fabric this way. All my curves are sewn and the seam is pressed towards the focus. So now let's square up. To square up, we look at our pattern. It shows us here. Go ahead and orient your block the same way. So it shows the skinnier piece is at the top right. And then we used orange lines to cut, so we're using orange lines to square up, orange dots. So what I'm doing is I'm placing the orange dot right on the curve. I will zoom in so you can see that. Yes. Right there. And you can see I'm just placing the orange dot. I do have some stripes on this block. Remember, you have the whole curve to play with. So go ahead and shift the Wonder Curve ruler until if your lines are really off, you can line them up with the marks on the ruler. And then trim 2 sides. Rotate your block. Now this time just line up trimmed edges with the 3-inch marks. We're making a 3-inch block. So go ahead and line them up there with 3-inch marks. Get that in a spot where you can see. Right there, they're lined up. And then go ahead and trim off whatever is left. And we are doing that with all 5 of our curved blocks. So go ahead and square them all up. So what we have here are 2 3x3 wing right here. So in this, the blue is the body and the teal is the wing. And so we are positioning, we have 2 3x3 wing, and then we are going to pair it up. One of them pairs up with a body, and one of them pairs up with a background. And then we draw a line. Let's see, we're not going to make 2 at a time. We're just making 1 half square triangle from each of these. So now we are drawing a line, diagonal line, from corner to corner. And I'm just using the straight edge of my Wonder Curve ruler. So I have a line drawn. You might have a laser on your machine or diagonal seam tape where you don't need to draw the line. You can just have it, you know, show you where to sew. So now I'm going to stitch right on that line. and then we'll trim 1/4 inch away. I have sewn right on the line. Now I am placing my 1/4 inch mark on my stitch line and trimming. So I'm going to show you here. And then we open this up and we have a 1/2 square triangle. And what should we do on that seam? Do we press open? Press seams toward wing fabric. So press it towards the wing fabric this way. You can also press before you trim. And sometimes that will help. If you have a really large block, it helps your block from being distorted. So I would go ahead and press this before I trim. That's another thought on this. Or you can just press and trim. All right, here it is. I have pressed, and I want to keep this part, these 2 pieces. So I peel back 1 layer and just process for a second. So line up your 1/4 inch mark, trim, and now we're here. And then this one, if I press now, I feel like it does make a little difference if your block gets really big. If you have a 6 by 6, then I would definitely press first, then trim. Okay, now we are ready to lay out. So now we take our pieces that we've pre-cut, and we're just following the directions in the book. We have a 3 by 5.5, and then we have a curved. We have the wing in both colors, and I'm just looking at the layout that it shows me in the book. Just make it, you know, totally look like the layout. Here we have our wing and, you know, the combination. And then we have a plain 3 inch here. And we have this one. And let's see, we also have here, and then here and here. Let me show those. And then we have our fabric. Okay, so what we're doing now is we are going to form rows. You're going to sew into rows and then press your seams open. And then we'll sew our rows together. So go ahead and do that step. Here I have rows sewn together. Go ahead and check your layout. Make sure it's the way it's supposed to be. Seams are pressed open. Now I'll sew the rows together. Here I have the rows sewn together and I've pressed seams open. So our last step here is to sew on the hummingbird beak. So this is 3/4 by 3 inches. So go ahead and sew that on the top here. And then you can press your seam open or press towards the beak. It might be a little chunky if you press towards the beak, but it's kind of a fun 3D effect where it pulls it out. The directions suggest pressing the seam open. So that will help to reduce a lot of layers. All right, I have it sewn on. I press my seam open. I'm going to sew here to here, and then I'll press that seam open. Here is the hummingbird block, and again, I press that seam open. Use a little steam when you're pressing your seams open. It will really help push those layers back over. And it's so adorable. It's one of my favorite blocks in the Floral Felicity pattern. This is also a good place to go ahead and check the size. This should be 10.5 by 10.5. And I know I have a 10-inch ruler here, 10 by 6. So I'm just lining up the edge. Yes, I have a 1/2 inch over here. I can guesstimate that's a 1/2 inch. If yours is more than that, then trim it down to 10.5 by 10.5. I would not trim off the beak side. I would trim here and here if yours is a little large. If it's a little small, you might want to look at your seams. Say, all right, where am I really being like I'm sewing too fat? I wouldn't do anything at this point. You'll just ease it in, but, you know, start to get more consistent at sewing a 1/4 inch seam.